What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Legged Podcast. Before this show starts, I just want to take a minute and tell you all about the secret perks you get if you sign up on Patreon. Now, to sign up on Patreon, it is £1 a week, that's it. And by doing so, you get early access to all our guests. You get an extra episode on a Wednesday that is only available just for Patreon members only. On a Saturday, we do a betting show where we've landed some pretty big bets, to be fair.
Yeah, cross footy and boxing and MMA.
We do live events, quizzes, you get early access to all them, and anything else we've got going on, it all comes to you first for those who support on Patreon. No better time to sign up. We've got about 100 episodes maybe of Patreon episodes, which are hilarious, if I do say so myself. All there available for you now. Get signed up. It's £1 a week, and we'll see you over there. Can we get 2 beers, please?
Of course.
Thank you very much. Right, here we are, part
it's your turn,
2.
this one.
It is my turn, and it's something very ironic. Because I've just ordered 2 beers and I would like to talk to you about beer.
Yeah.
Not just beer, wine, vodka, rum, whatever you tickle, alcohol. Because it is such a, it's just a way of life. I was going to say it's such a British thing. Listen, let's be honest, it's a worldwide thing. Maybe it is a bit more in British culture.
I don't know if it is, you know.
Do you know?
Well, I've worked with a lot of...
Maybe this could be the first little misconception about alcohol then.
I tell you what, we have a lot of international clients, so we've had a few international clients, and I wouldn't say any have got the defaults we've got. I think what we'll talk about today is defaults.
You're telling me you meet an international client and they don't all go, it's going to get fucking legless now?
Well, I've said this a million times. If it kicks off in Tenerife, right, it won't be the Germans, will it?
No.
If there's a fight in the middle of Las Americas,
Spritz.
thanks, Kerry.
Thank you very much.
It tends to be, they tend to come from our island, don't they?
England. Yeah, I agree.
But I also know, I think we've got defaults. We'll probably come on to them in a little sec, because mine changed when I started to work internationally, actually. My idea on alcohol, to some degree, changed.
Well, before we start properly, to alcohol.
Cheers, yeah.
To alcohol.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I think it's so fascinating because, again, it is such a part of our everyday life. And I think more than ever now, there is a bit of a kind of culture building of kind of shunning alcohol. I know, especially with younger people. I done a gig the other week, ironically, at the British Pub Awards in Manchester. And I spoke to a guy who was on the Heineken 00 stand. And he was telling me, we've got a mutual friend who's in the industry. And young people are much more kind of in the space of less alcohol, more kind of games, you know, bowling. You've got places like Roxy's, you know, I say
experiential
beer
leisure,
experiential leisure, which is a far cry from what I grew up with, where, you know, you're smoking in boozers. The boozers I grew up with were not many women in there, old men boozers, if you like, and that was the upbringing I had. So that's definitely shaped, if you like, my relationship, arguably, with alcohol. I then joined the military. There's a big drinking culture within the military, and I go to the match now. I've got a season ticket at Liverpool, drinking a.
Can you go without having a drink to the game?
Well, that's the whole point I want to kind of delve into. Could I? Most definitely. I've took my daughter, you know, a dozen times, don't drink. Would I find it weird going with all my mates and not having a drink? Probably. Which is quite sad when I say it out loud now. And I'm conscious this is a very concise 20-30 minute conversation about alcohol. I've just got so many different views on it and so many different questions I want to ask you about how you view on it, because it's fascinating. I think it is so fascinating how individuals we view it, how we view it when we're in groups, when we feel there's a necessity to kind of listen. As a British culture, someone dies, you get pissed. Someone's born, you get pissed. Someone's birthday, you get pissed. Someone gets a new job, you get pissed. Someone gets married, you get pissed.
Yeah.
But I also think now, there's quite a lot of few people giving up alcohol, which causes its own stresses and pressures as well. So I think I
was going to say that was an age thing then, but it's like I have a 16-year-old, 17-year-old son, and he's far less interested in. When I was a kid, you know, I remember.
How old were you when you had your first drop of alcohol?
I think I was about 13, 14 from memory.
Similar.
And so there's a few things that I remember. I remember doing it organised, let's say, or structured with family. I remember my dad giving me my third. Sat with my mum and dad in Turkey when I was probably 14. He said, "Here's half a beer." And I don't know what it is about beer. I don't know what it was. There was something about it. by the way, it's genetic. You know, if you like having beer, there's studies that has been shown. If you've got an alcohol problem, they can trace it back to genetics. But at that point, I was 14, I had a beer. And also at that time, I remember getting drunk the first time. And that was at my mate's, like a birthday or something. So he'd have been 14. It was his uncle's birthday, whatever. We went to the pub. They were sneaking us the drinks. Had like 6 pints of bitter then.
Like big time. Fucking
Oh
hell.
my God. But I was
Drinking bitter at 14.
throwing up everywhere, right? It was vile. Boddington's, I don't even think it was that good. It was Wilson's. I don't
I'm
even know.
34, I've never had a pint of Boddington in my life.
Man, it was. So I remember throwing up from it, thinking, I ain't ever going to do this ever again. This is me, done.
And here we are.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I then drank every weekend. So when I was a teenager, I drank on the park every weekend. That's what I did. I loved my footy, Saturday, Sunday. I used to play Saturdays and Sundays, but I would drink Friday and Saturday night. It would be White Lightning on the park, 2 bottles, getting people to go in the off licence. That's how I started. And I would say I've never stopped since, if I'm honest with you.
It's just on that joking point you make, what do you think the longest period of non-alcohol
Since then?
since then? Since 15?
Yeah, maybe I did dry January about 3-4 years ago for a month.
So a month, do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon it's a month since I was 14, 15.
Mad that, isn't it?
It's mad. And we're filming this podcast on about the 20th of Jan or whatever it is today. And I didn't say I was going to do dry Jan, but I took 2 or 3 weeks off. And last night, I sat down with Mrs. and I said, oh, should we get some nice food and a bottle of red? Now, the thing is about that is you can start going, well, we're not sat here having pints of Stones anymore or whatever it was, or we're not having cans of Special Brew. You kind of can mask drinking to be sophisticated. Wine's a great way of doing that, isn't it? Oh, having a bottle of red with a steak. Sounds like,
that sounds better than I've gone to the pub and had 7 pints
it
with
does.
the lads.
It's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that my relationship with by the way, my very first relationship was, and these podcasts, in the spirit of how they're going to be, is going to be open. My very, very first kind of relationship with alcohol is my biological father, who I don't know, wouldn't pick me up from the age of 2, 3, 4 and 5 when he subsequently left because he was always drinking. So I subsequently have a love-hate relationship with it, which we'll talk about probably in a bit, and quite a few of us do have. Mine is based off, I think that if you're drinking, and I love the drink, if you're drinking, you could be doing something more productive with your loved ones. So if I try to cut myself some slack today, if I'm having a drink with you and we go out for a drink tonight, but deep in me subconsciously tomorrow morning, there'll be an element of fighting in my mind with why did I drink last night when I could have come home, didn't go out with Andy, I could have come home and been with the kids.
Of guilt?
Yeah, guilt. So beer fear, which most people
I think
call
that's
it.
different though than guilt, do you not think? I think beer fear for me
Possibly.
would be kind of like, you don't know, did I say something I shouldn't have? Did I read the room wrong? And I think what you're kind of getting to is, I've spent my time wrongly, or
Yes.
I've misplaced my time there. I've spent an extra hour with Andy when actually could I have done without that extra beer? Should have been with the kids and the missus.
And you could be right, and yet I'm quite disciplined around beer, because what I think in life is you've got to cut yourself some slack every now and again. My slack is beer. The thing, I don't do drugs, I don't cheat, I don't do, there's all these vices, let's call them vices, that other people might do.
Yeah.
My vice is I like to have a beer. And I think, God, in life you have a vice, as long as it's not doing anybody any harm. But with me, there'll be a guilt. And depending how much you've drunk, there'll be a beer fear as we get. As I've got older, and age does play a big part in it, I'm quite disciplined with heart rate, I'm quite disciplined with, blood pressures and heart rate variability and resting heart rates and,
Accountability for you almost.
I have a Fitbit that I try and measure as much as I can. I live my day by my Fitbit. I'm constantly seeing, what have I done tonight? And has that made a difference? Man, when you drink.
Yeah, I've seen your stats when you...
I put them out on social, just so people can be aware. Because if
I
you
try not to look at it because it makes me feel bad.
well, if I go on holiday, I take the Fitbit off. I'll be honest with you, because it's depressing.
Yeah.
It depresses me. I don't get depressed. I'm anxious, and that will be a different podcast. I get anxious. That's forward energy, thinking what might go wrong in the future. Depression is what energy you're carrying on your shoulder from things that have happened in the past. And I can get down on beer pretty quickly, I think.
But even talking about, without even talking your relationship with alcohol as an adult, what I found mad, we're just speaking about our first kind of moments with alcohol, if you like, or memories of it. You mentioned there about your biological father who had a problem with alcohol. My mum passed away when I was 12, so I essentially lived with my nan and granddad.
Yeah.
My granddad was a raging alcoholic.
Yeah.
And, it's so funny, all the things I talk about in my life, getting blown up, this, all this crazy stuff. From the ages of 13, 14, 15, I seen my granddad piss himself, shit himself in a chair because he was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Before school, drinking a bottle of scotch. And so, in a way, that was my first relationship with alcohol. And you would have thought then, you've got your biological father who can't see you because he's an alcoholic. I'm looking at my granddad, pissed as a fart at 9 o'clock and 8:30 in the morning. And yet, it hasn't put us off that much.
No.
To go, I'm never having one.
It's a social thing, isn't it?
Do you not think that's crazy though?
I was saying before about like default. So I think that sets your default, right? We're talking about defaults and other things like I can go to the gym every day because it's my default. Not drinking, I'd have to maneuver around that default. My default will be to drink, so it becomes much harder. Some people go, you go to the gym every day, that must be horrible, it must be bad. I think, I just get up every morning.
That's
I
your
think,
thing,
I find that really easy. It doesn't mean somebody else does. I don't find not drinking easy. I have to work at not drinking. I have to work at not drinking. So you go through all those years where probably in your 20s, it's a social thing, isn't it?
100%. Listen, for me personally, my relationship with alcohol is 100% social. I don't drink in the house. I wouldn't be one in 100 days. I'd sit there and have a beer on my own. If I wanted to have a beer tonight on my own, I'd have to go to the shops and buy one. I don't very rarely have bottles of beer in the house and drink on my own. I'm like you, what you say with your missus. If I have a date round, I'll get a bottle of wine. Yeah. That's the only alcohol I ever consume. Yeah. For me personally, I only ever drink.
Sophisticated drinking.
Sophisticated drinking. For me personally, it's only ever. And the two things which, one I'm okay with, one I've got a problem with, is social. The one I've got a problem with socially is my relationship with my dad. Now, my dad is he's very old school. He's quite a shy man. He's 58, so it's 30 years in the fire brigade, and he's a man of a certain age, if you like. I guarantee you now, I would not have, well, I would have a relationship with him, but I wouldn't have the relationship I've got with him if I didn't drink. Yeah. So I feel a certain pressure to have a beer. Otherwise, that relationship, it wouldn't be nurtured in the same way. Same way with the lads from the match. If I didn't drink with regards to going hand in hand with watching Liverpool, would I have the same friendships that I've got now? Probably not. So for me, I'm like you, I love having a beer. And I love having the beers that we have together and stuff and all that. But straight away, I can name you X amount of relationships that probably wouldn't be as strong and as fruitful if there was no beer involved in that. And that makes me actually really sad.
And the problem with that is, I sometimes look at my relationship, but I think in life, if I've got a regret, I don't think I've got a regret outside of beer. But there's been things I've done, I think, fucking hell. Yeah. And every single time, there's been a beer involved. If you said the wrong thing, or you've done the wrong thing, with me anyway, I could think.
I mean, like 90% though.
I'd take that back. And the only way you take it back if you didn't have a beer. But by the way, I would say the same thing. Most of the best times I've had, have involved it too. And I do think it comes down to a social default thing. I look around, when I go to an airport, I look around, it's 4 a.m, everybody's drinking. That was me, but then I started working away. So I'd get to the airport at 4 and I'd have to have a coffee because I'd have a meeting at 9 a.m. in Stockholm, or used to do Milan, Rome, Dublin, used to go all over the place working. And it changes your default. This is why I think default and recognising it's quite important. Because What actually happened, what happened very easily there was, I'd look around the first few times I was in the airport going to Sweden, I'd think, fucking hell, these guys are on a stag do, they're on this. Look at them, that couple there having a bottle of wine at 4 a.m. or they're on 2 pints. I'm thinking, that should be me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times later, my default has changed.
Not even a thought, no.
No. So now, me and my missus
That's interesting.
4 a.m. I mean, I wouldn't even consider it. 6 a.m. I wouldn't consider it. 9 a.m. I wouldn't even consider it. So now if we go away, we went away on the Christmas do to Benidorm in December, and there's 120 odd of us, and most people. Now I had a beer. It was like 6 o'clock or something, but that doesn't become my default. You have to. That has to be repetitive behaviour.
Yeah.
If I went away and did 6 a.m. beers for 6 or 7 times, that would become a new default.
Yeah.
What actually happened was, I went away for 300 times at 6 a.m. in the morning, watched everybody else having beers, going to the football games. I'm flying out to Sweden. Loads of lads are going to Sweden or Norway, or they're going to Italy for the game. And I'd be on there thinking, I've got a meeting at 9 o'clock. At that point, it doesn't enter your head. So your default changes. And it's quite interesting how quickly it can change.
It is, but at the same time, you're talking about having a default of not drinking. I have got, and maybe this makes me out to be not a great friend, I don't know. I'll let the people at home decide, but I've had friends who've decided that they're going to give up drinking. And I don't know about you, but I've just seen friends just dwindle away from friendship groups because they've, you know, for their own reasons, wanting to better themselves, wanting to become healthier, whatever, I've stopped drinking. And I've seen them just kind of then just, you don't see them as much because they don't want to spend the time in the pub. And maybe it's a friendship problem in the sense that all you ever do is go to the pub together. You don't go for a walk together. You don't go bloody whitewater rafting together. You know, there's a plethora of things you could do instead of going to the pub. But I've seen where people decide not to drink and they just slowly get phased out of friendship groups. And there's probably a subconscious fear about that. You know, if I don't want to drink, when will I see the lads anymore? When will I see me dad? So it's a weird one, mate, because I genuinely do love having a beer.
Yeah.
I love having a beer. I actually like the taste of it. I like feeling a bit lucid and like, you know, all of that. But there definitely is a kind of pressure where I think I've got to keep up having a beer with certain people and at certain times. Otherwise,
Would you not have one otherwise? Because this is the thing.
Honestly, Paul, if all my friends never drank and the only time I ever caught up with them is they come round the house and they had a cup of tea or we played football, I don't know. Honestly, I probably wouldn't drink. If you said to me, right, mate, we're going to catch you up, you know, once a month, twice a month, come round and, you know, Jerry can cook dinner one week and then I'll cook dinner the next and no beer. I think I'd be all right with that.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, it's more, and by the way, I get the way people with high pressure jobs like to come home and have a glass of wine or whatever, and that's for, nah, that's not me. Mine is all kind of socially engineered, pressured drinking.
But is the worrying about it engineered as well? Is the key? Because it is a question, because this kind of spawns out a little bit from when we was in Iceland, when we was in Marbella, is that actually you start feeling guilty about drinking. But why? Well,
I think there's definitely, you know, we're in 2023 now. I think for the last few years, there's been a massive emphasis on sober October, you know, sobriety in general, which, by the way, is a great thing for a lot of people. I almost think a little bit like, you know, you kind of, you know, there's people making great efforts not to drink, which is amazing. And I almost feel a little bit like, oh, should I be doing this? And should I do? So I think the kind of pressure comes from both sides. Why aren't you doing a sober January? Or why aren't you, you know, and I think the dynamic with people in friendship groups who don't drink, and then there's the guys who are like, well, why don't you just have one? And then it's fascinating, isn't it, how people kind of view themselves within the group if they are having a drink, and view themselves if they're not having a drink, and how you view.
I think it comes with an age as well. I said this before, but when you're 23, God, I remember being 23, going to Faliraki and Magaluf and Malia. 23, you go for 2 weeks. You just drink.
Oh, every day, yeah.
You just wake up, go by the pool, you just drink. And there's no care in the world. So I feel like a lot of the beer fear, if you like, you know, because I talked about my relationship with alcohol from 3, 4 year old thinking, God, you're a bit of a loser if you drink because you don't have priorities, for example. But actually, when I was 24, I didn't think that. I just went to Puerto Rico and Gran Canaria for 2 weeks and thought, oh, God, we go home tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now you go out for 2 nights and you think, my God, have we got to drink again for another day because we've got, So I feel like it does come with like, there becomes like an age anxiety, maybe. That's how it's worked with me.
You say that though, but at your age now, if I said to you, right, this is your last pint ever.
It'd be tough, It'd be tough. I don't know why. By the way, I don't know why, but it would be tough. And yet at the same token, I really try to be disciplined when I drink. I still beat myself up when I drink, but I try to be disciplined, and I'm coming back to it before. If I sleep, I am constantly monitoring this Fitbit. If I just done 16 days without a drink, right? 16 days without a drink. My heart rate has gone down to 51 resting heart rate. When I'm asleep, 44.
Maybe about 60 or now, once you've been drinking.
Tell you now, let's have a look. See what it is. Now we're sat 70.
And you're not doing anything, are you? You're just sitting there.
So I've gone from 51, 52 to 70.
That's weird, isn't it?
Right. The more we drink, the worse it's going to be. So let's say, for example, tonight.
Should we go home?
We have a few more pints. We go home, and I'm going to be asleep. And let's say 1 a.m. I'll be normally 44 beats a minute. I'm going to be 74. It's like 100% more. It's not 100%, but it's almost 100% more. And you think, this can't be good for you. Yeah. My HRV, which is pretty low anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't stop you though from doing it again next week.
No, it doesn't, because you know what? There's a part where you've got to live your life. I think the thing is you've got to understand, how much is it affecting? I try to look at how much is it affecting performance, because I am obsessed with my own performance. And that's not performance as, are we making more money? That is, I'm in a good mood. Am I anxious? Am I being a good dad? Am I getting the work done that I need to do? How am I feeling? I didn't drink for like 3 weeks just recently. And I went to bed like Sunday night and I was like, I feel good. The idea of feeling lethargic and slow and moody and tired, all those things that it brings, I don't like it. I like to feel refreshed and busy. And so I am, because I'm obsessed with performance, it's like alcohol's always going to minimise that. And so that, I don't know if my relationship over the years has moved from you could be doing better things with your time, and actually maybe your priorities get wrong with alcohol, to who cares, you're 23, 24, you're in Magaluf and you really don't care, to 30. And I think your 30s is quite important anyway in life, because I think your 30s are going to set out the rest of your life. Not always, but often. Because your 20s, you feel infallible. You can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah.
30s, with me, anxiety starts creeping. Then the kids start to come and take up your time. And I feel like your 30s kind of set the scene, really, for the future. And with me, I don't know, alcohol just... I'm always trying to be measuring what the effect is on what I'm doing. And it's genuinely negative, negative.
I mean, I don't want to come across anyone listening thinking, God, Andy gets pressured into drinking by his dad and his mates, because, like I said, I do love it.
That's your excuse, isn't it?
That's my excuse, yeah. I just think it is fascinating to kind of wonder, like, the upbringing I've had and the things that I like doing happen to involve alcohol, and I wonder if they didn't, what would you still enjoy them as much and stuff?
So I had a client in Sweden about 8 years ago. I went to Sweden, maybe slightly longer, and he went, and I had a beer, and he went, I'll have a alcohol zero, Heineken zero. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, what do you mean, what's that? And coming back to before, where I think Britain, the culture is different, I was like, he was like, what do you mean, what's that? And I was like, Heineken zero, what's that? And he was like, we all drink Heineken zero in Stockholm. Now, we don't drink beer. I'm not saying they all do, but that was a conversation. I was like, you have zero beer on draft. That was 10 years ago. Now, I would say Heineken Zero has been out, here, 4?
Well, I only had my first pint of it maybe 6 months ago.
Really? And you can see it now. I mean, remember what it was, Barbican, I think it was called, like in the 20 years ago. Do you remember that? I mean, it was alcohol-free beer, but you tasted it was like a mixture of treacle and beer and I don't know, it was awful. So they were already doing that. Europe was already doing alcohol zero way before Britain. This is why I'm come back to what we're at the start. So he was like, now, he was a stressed out guy, successful. And he said, I can't do what I need to do in the next 3 years if I drink alcohol. And he took his business to worth over 100 million, 110 million he sold for. And he started to drink again after he sold it. So he gave up for 3 years, did what he needed to do, high performed every day, sold his business, started drinking again. We have another guy in the club when we was in Iceland, and he's got a business worth hundreds of millions. And he doesn't drink. And I went and had a beer with him. He's got a place near me in Marbella, and we went and had a beer. He had non-alcoholic, I had alcoholic. We had 6 beers on the beach. His was non-alcoholic, mine was alcoholic. And I said, how come you don't drink? And he goes, Paul, listen, he's 54 or 50, I'm guessing 54 or something like that. And he goes, there's no way my business will be 400 or 500 million if I drank. And he goes, but the other side of it is I love the beer as much as anyone. And I just decided one day I wouldn't drink for a month, and a month turned into 2 months, and I thought, I don't actually need this anymore. And he's never drank, and he said, but there's no way my company could be in the place it was. And he's also changed the social way.
But I know what you mean, and he's a great guy. You wouldn't know whether he was drinking or not. No, he's just a great guy all around, and that makes me think that maybe I am making excuses with the match with my dad, and I probably maybe could. So,
but is it affecting anything you do?
No, to be honest, no.
So what? You know, with me,
I'm not irresponsible with it. I still work out. I'd like to think a good dad. I'm still do my job well, and so no, it's not affecting. But I'm not growing a 3, 4, 500 million pound business like our friends. So it's, but I guarantee there'll be people out there who've got a relationship with alcohol and they're a bit like, am I drinking because it's habit? Am I drinking because I feel pressured to? Am I drinking because I like this person and I'll only get to see this person if I drink? I think. But the other thing as well, I'll throw into the mix with all of this, is it takes a lot of hard, looking in the mirror, asking yourself honest questions,
Always.
Am I prepared to give up alcohol for 2 years to get where I want to be?
Yeah.
Am I prepared to give this up because I don't like the person I am, but it's going to sacrifice this friendship?
Yeah.
And they're maybe the questions. And
I think if it's hampering performance, and I mean performance being relationships, I mean yourself, how you feel, your weight, all those things. If it's hampering that, then you have to look at it. If it's not, then maybe then it's okay to let it slide. But my brother-in-law was, I would say, he was an alcoholic from the age of 20 to 40, and he's with my sister. And my sister's older than me. She's like 6 years older than me. They had 3 kids together, and he was an alcoholic for 20 years. He now runs Alcoholic Anonymous for the northwest of England. All the time he was an alcoholic, I didn't even talk to him. I couldn't even speak to the guy. But he was like, this kind of alcohol was walking down the streets at 10 a.m. in the morning with a kind of special room. But I don't know what on earth happened to him at the age of 40, but he decided he's going to change his life. He ain't going to drink anymore, which probably we'd heard a million times before. But I wasn't that close to him anyway, because I just couldn't face. In the years since he's given it up, he took that obsession. I've got an obsession. I'm obsessed with work. Now, if I wasn't obsessed with work, I could be obsessed with something else.
Could be alcohol.
And it could well be alcohol, which is for me an issue. In later life, I'm like remaining purposed away from it, because I could easily go and play tennis in the morning or go to the gym and think, I've earned a beer. Because that's another thing about football or sport as a culture is, when we grew up with sport, it was like really an excuse to drink afterwards. One of the big problems I think about alcohol, which I think is the saddest part, is as people aren't drinking, pubs are shutting. And you know what? The men that used to sit at the bar in pubs like we're sitting now, where do they go? Where do they go to talk? Where do they go when the wife's gone or the husband's gone, and they go and they sit and they used to just chat to Mavis or George at the bar? Pub's gone. More so than that, suddenly football's gone. Sport has gone, because that used to be the dog and duck in Bootle or whatever you had. They'd have the Sunday League team. You'd go and play football. You'd go back. That was my also.
That's what I mean.
We didn't talk about that in our 20s.
From alcohol and all that.
Wow, I've met the best people in the world through playing football on a Sunday morning, going back to the pub afterwards and having a sandwich and drinking beers with them, watching the football. They were some of the best days of my life. Yeah. And I look around now and all the pubs are shut. And the pubs are closing. The teams, that the league...
Communities have been broken up in that sense, probably.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite sad. But I think if it's affecting you in an everyday, and I've come back to my brother-in-law, he, at the age of 40-ish, I would say, it's been about 10 years now, decided he was going to check. How he broke that habit after 20 years, I don't know. But he did. And then all of a sudden, his obsession is building. So he's a builder, never had a job before, becomes obsessed with building the way he was obsessed with drinking, gave it the same amount of attention, all of a sudden becomes good at what he does, gets annoyed with people around him, starts his own business, and now he's 50 and he's got a thriving business.
In a weird way, episode 2 of alcohol kind of comes back to episode 1 about goals and passion. You know, if that's what you kind of end up being, what you put your focus into, then actually it might end up being what defines you, whether it's alcohol or whatever your goal is. And I think you're right in what you say. That's maybe something for you later on in life, to make sure that your purpose doesn't just become a natural.
I'm already planting them seeds because I know what would happen, because I'm quite capable.
I think alcohol is one where, obviously, this kind of podcast series is going to go on and talk about many different things in life, but I think alcohol is one of those ones where people will duck and dive in and out of different episodes that we're going to talk about. This is probably one of episodes where everyone will go, let's listen to what their view is, because everyone's got a view and an opinion and a relationship with alcohol.
And I think we also beat ourselves up probably more than what we should. Maybe it's just me that does that, but I don't feel like it's that, because you'll ring somebody up and they've got the beer fear. They've got the anxiety that's come with it. And by the way, there is physiological issues that alcohol is going to generate that's going to make you, particularly nowadays when anxiety is, we'll talk about that on a completely separate podcast, but anxiety is prevalent in society. Yeah. And the minute you have a beer, you're going to increase your heart rate, which gives you the pounding effect. You get up in the morning, you can feel like that, you feel sick, you don't feel well.
Snowball, isn't it?
The anxiety that everybody's already got, a society disease, is enhanced by the alcohol. But what I would say is this, is that, you know, I have a real love-hate with it. I love it and I hate it. But I've seen it destroy people. And on the flip side, I've seen destroyed people come out of it and rebound. So I think wherever you are on that journey, a guy spoke to me the other week and he goes, I'm sick of it on a Monday morning. And I go, I hate the hangovers, but if you don't have a hangover, there's a bigger issue, isn't there? Because at least a hangover makes you think, I don't want to do this regularly.
Yeah.
If you don't have the hangover, what's stopping you? Yeah. That's the danger, really. So I feel like wherever you are on your journey with it, there's an end. I'm fighting it. Generally, I'm fighting where I'm at, but I've seen people overcome it where I'm talking special brew at 8 a.m. instead of cornflakes, and still where you are with it, you can come back from it.
No, 100%, and that's the unique kind of thing about alcohol. Everyone's got that different relationship with it. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. I know not everyone will be the same as me and Paul. Some of you may be sober, give it up for good. Some may be doing it for a month. Let us know your thoughts. If you want us to talk over any more of this, again, let us know. This is episode 2 of bringing some life hacks and our thoughts together on the podcast. That's me and Paul. Hope you enjoy. We'll see you next week.